Hi everyone, welcome to this week's Adventures in Astronomy. We are getting into the realms of being incredibly spoiled in PixInsight for noise extraction or noise cleanup tools. Back in the day, and I'm sure many of you out there who've been processing over the years will remember, before we had NoiseXTerminator, we had to do things manually in PixInsight. It'd take hours. You'd get weird things happening with stars, even if you did get it right, and it would just take forever to use. Today, and on screen, I wanted to show you the latest and greatest. This is a process that comes from Italian company Sycon, and we've got SetiAstro and Frank to thank for porting it into PixInsight as a process for us. Thank you, Frank. You are a complete machine. So we're going to get straight into it. And basically all I've done today is we've got a Galaxy of a Whirlpool Galaxy. We've got an unprocessed version. We've got a stretched version. The only differences between these two images are that one has been just default stretched. They've both been color calibrated. They've both got blur exterminator applied. What would you normally do with NoiseXTerminator? Well, you'd normally look at your image and you normally load in NoiseXTerminator and you do a real-time preview, maybe zoom into the area that I'm interested in looking in, and it's already applied it as a real-time preview, and you would undo and redo just in the real-time preview, and that's done a very nice cleanup of the data. Noise has been removed. Nothing else has happened. You'll notice nothing else has happened to the image or the stars. And for my machine, I've got a default setting of about 70. I do use the denoise color. I find the intensity color separation does that little bit extra, and I usually have that on a little bit higher. So that's that job done on NoiseXTerminator. However, I want to introduce you to this new script. So if you go to Script, SyQon and Prism, and if you don't know how to load scripts, there are loads of other videos showing you how to install this process. And basically the really lovely thing about this is the default settings it comes with are absolutely fine. So these tile sizes and pad sizes and those numbers should absolutely identically match each other. If you want to know more about this, then I'd suggest going to the Sycon Prism website. There's a really good video by Frank on there that will already tell you about these settings. And the overlap set at 128 or 256, it takes a little bit longer on 256. And then you just put the wrench on for where you've saved the script. It doesn't matter where you save it on your folders, but you just need to locate it. For me, I've put it in the PixInsight folder, and it just seems like an obvious place to put it, to tuck it away out the way. But these are all the default settings. Strength and MTF target, again, leave alone and just let it do its thing. And so it runs through, and you can see on screen it's going through a process. Now, this is nowhere near as fast as Blur Exterminator. So Blur Exterminator takes, what, a few seconds? Depends on the kind of camera you're using. On a Sony 571 sensor, it takes about a minute 15 seconds, a minute and a half. I'm running an M4 series Mac. So that process took about 1 minute 20 seconds and it's finished and done a job. So let's start to have a look at some of the differences or similarities. This is not going to be a video that says this process is better than this process, because my conclusions on this are going to be it depends. So whether you choose to use Blur Exterminator or this new Sycon process, DeepPRISM, it's up to you. I'm just going to show you what it does. So I've got a Galaxy unprocessed NoiseXTerminator version, and I've got a Sycon version. And let's just take that out the way a second. I don't know if you can notice right next to them. So they've both done a fantastic job with the noise. I like to have, and I've said this before in my videos, a tiny little bit of a grain in the background from NoiseXTerminator. So I tend to back it off a little bit just because it looks a little bit more natural. This has done a slightly more stronger process with the noise, but both images look absolutely great. What you might see is that in the SyQon version, we seem to have had maybe a saturation boost, a slight noise boost, and also some sort of histogram intensity put on there. I mean, we've got a sharpness down here that isn't present in this version from NoiseXTerminator. Now, to my tastes, that is a little bit too strong. It does look a little bit blocky to me. So I went and redid the process with 60% strength instead of the default 85% strength. And not that much different, to be honest, but they've both done a really good job, certainly at solving the noise. What you might notice with the 65% strength, if I just bring in the 85% strength, if you do look at the background, it's a little bit more grainy than this one. So 85 as a default setting would appear to be a fairly decent spot. What I did want to do is just compare these processes to a stretched version just to see if there was any difference. So here's a stretched and unstretched in NoiseXTerminator, and I can't notice any difference whatsoever between those two processes at all. Let's just look at the SyQon version versus the unprocessed SyQon. Let's just get the same image view so that we are comparing apples with apples. And there we go. So again, I can't really notice too much of a difference. There is a slight difference in the stretched version in terms of it looks a little bit more blocky over here, whereas it's done a slightly smoother result over here in this part of the galaxy. So I'm looking specifically at this part here, and I haven't quite got enough screen space to do this comparison, but I don't know if you can see that. It's a slightly smoother result. The stretched version has done a slightly more blocky result. So that's one example from galaxies. I just thought it'd be worth going into having a look at a second version, but this time with a unprocessed and processed version of a nebula, and the Pelican Nebula in this case. And again, all that's different is that one has had just a histogram stretch. That's it. They've both been color calibrated. They've both had blur exterminator applied. So if we look at the nebula processed version, a close-up version of that one, and a stretched version rather, again, I don't really see too much in the differences, if any. The stretched version has got ever so slightly more, just a little bit more definition just in this area here. By the way, it's worth noting at this point, this was taken with a different camera. It's not a 571 sensor, it's an Attic 460. It's only got 6 megapixels. So you can see a slight change, but really not much difference at all. Just going to zoom out a little bit on those, because what I'd like to do is compare that with the unprocessed and processed SyQon, and this we can definitely see a difference. Again, this time I think it is the other way around. We've got an unprocessed version which is actually not done as good a job as the stretched version, whereas last time round in the Galaxy version, it was the unprocessed version that did the better job. So it's interesting that we've got a slight difference between these two and not much of a difference between NoiseXTerminator examples. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it up against the stretched version of NoiseXTerminator, and we can see a couple of differences. They're quite subtle, but what we can see is we've got both have done a great job on the noise, but we've got a little bit more sort of depth and detail here on the SyQon version, but it depends where you look in the image, because this filament structure here feels sort of thin and about right, whereas it's gone a little bit blocky over here. But both have done great jobs, I think. For me, slightly, I think I am preferring NoiseXTerminator a little bit, because you'll see if we go back to our Galaxy versions that we've definitely got just noise being replaced with NoiseXTerminator, but SyQon is doing something else, definitely. It's sharpening it up, it's doing some histogram equalization or something. Now, on the DeepPRISM website, on the SyQon website, it does have a little bit of kind of information, but it doesn't really tell you fully what it is or isn't doing. It does talk about the result is a clearer background, fainter detail, stronger foundation, and it does mention things like stretching here, color, contrast, sharpening, local enhancement, and it does appear definitely that it's very subtly done some of those things. Now, here's where I'd have a little bit of an argument with it, because I have done a version in NoiseXTerminator, but you'll see the title up here says more processing, and what I've done with this version, let me just bring it out the way a second, is I've done a local histogram equalization pass with a small amount. I've done a separate video, by the way, on using local histogram equalization. It's a fantastic tool. But I've done two passes. I've done one at a large kernel radius and this one at a small kernel radius, both with quite small strengths. And I've also done a small amount of sharpening. I didn't put a mask on. If you're doing this properly, you'd put a mask on because this is going to affect the background. And if we do compare these both, you'll see that the SyQon background over here is smoother than the background here, because I wasn't using a mask. But the point is, I wanted to do this experiment to see what kind of an impact it's having on the Galaxy. Now when we're comparing the two, because we've got control over the additional processes we're doing, I prefer this version. It's a little bit less blocky, a little bit more natural looking, and I've had full control over the process. So I've done these local histogram enhancements, I've done the sharpening. I definitely prefer it. So which tool you use, by and large, is up to you, really, in terms of what works for your workflow. And I'm not really going to conclude this video by saying one is better than the other. I mean, certainly with SyQon, you're missing a few additional processing steps and it gets you a lovely result. However, with the NoiseXTerminator route, you're more in control of those additional steps if you choose to put some local histogram equalization into it and some sharpening. So I'd be interested to know which version you prefer, and if you could put in the comments down below, it'd be great to get some debate going on this. But I definitely would say either tool does a great job on noise. The costs are fairly interesting because the DeepPRISM is €37 and NoiseXTerminator comes out at just under $60. So there's a euro to dollars thing going on. So NoiseXTerminator works out a fraction more expensive. So if you're very cost conscious, then SyQon would be more of the approach to go for. But really, I don't think it matters that much either way. Anyhow, I hope you've enjoyed today's video and it's got you thinking about noise. Certainly, one of these processes are what you should be using rather than the built-in tools into PixInsight. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. My name's Martin. You've been watching Adventures in Astronomy. I'll see you soon.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.